Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock. Members, sorry. Before we get started, I just want to let members know that we've received apologies from Councillors Khan and Jones, Chair and Vice Chair of the committee. They won't be attending today. So according to Council procedure rules, if Chair and Vice are absent, committee members will choose a chair from amongst you to preside the meeting today. I understand Councillor Wood has received chair's training. So members, I would like one of you please to propose that a new chair preside over this meeting. Would anybody like to propose? Yep. Councillor Cox, who are you proposing? Thank you. Councillor Wood, is that seconded? Thank you. Councillor Kidger, is that agreed? Yeah, thank you then. Councillor Wood, if you wouldn't mind popping up to the hot seat. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's Planning Committee. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting the public can attend. I am Councillor Neil Wood, Chair of the Planning Committee. Before we commence, I would like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We are not expecting a fire practice today. If the alarm sounds, please leave the building by way of the fire exit through the doors at the rear of the chamber on my right. When you have left the chamber, proceed down the stairway and exit through the emergency exit on the ground floor. If there is anybody with mobility issues, please wait in the refuge area at the top of the stairs where the emergency evacuation lift is located and use the intercom situated to the left-hand side of lift doors to call for assistance. The designated assembly point is in the public square in front of CAS beyond the fountain. I'd like to inform members of the public and press that today's meeting will be audio-visually recorded. By entering the council chamber, you accept that you'll be recorded and your images retained and broadcast by the council on its website and on YouTube. If anybody intends to record or film any part of today's meeting, please ensure that this is done. Does not disturb the conduct of the meeting and you only focus on recording those people participating. Please ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silent mode, please. May I remind anyone speaking in the meeting that you will need to press the large red button underneath the microphone and ensure the red light is illuminated. This will ensure you are recorded. The meeting is proceeding today on the basis that all members of the committee have read their agenda papers thoroughly and are aware of what they will be considering today. If any members of the committee leave the chamber during consideration of application, they should ensure they do not take part in the vote on their return, as they will not have heard all the relevant information on that particular item. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. We've got apologies for Councillors Vicky Lawson, Steve Plater, Chair Majid Khan and Vice Chair Alexander Jones. Are there any other apologies? Exclusions of the public and press. There are no exempt items on today's agenda. Declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare an interest in an item of business on today's agenda, please? Steve.
Chair, Finlay Ward Member.
Please declare and complete a declaration form and hand it to the Governance Officer following the meeting. Minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 23rd of September 2025. Can the minutes be moved as a true and accurate record? Cheers, Bob. Is that seconded? Cheers. Is that agreed, yeah? Right, there's been a change to the rule that we're going to take today. We're going straight to item 3, which is application number 3, 25/01437/FUL. Erection of a detached double garage, workshop, store, WC an office with rooms in the roof space and the installation of photovoltaic solar panels and roof lights to the roof at 57A Spring Lane, Sprotbrough, Doncaster. Sarah Dodds, the planning case officer, will introduce this item. Sarah.
Good afternoon all. Good afternoon all. No objections have been received from the consultees, including the tree officer and the development control highway section. 14 letters of objections have been received from 8 different neighbouring property addresses in connection with this application. Slide 4 shows the long shared access driveway which leads to the existing backland dormer bungalow development, which is number 57A Spring Lane, Sprotbrough, Doncaster. Slide 5 shows the proposed development area, which is in the northern corner of the site in question. This photo also shows the existing neighbouring outbuildings, which currently forms a cluster of outbuildings to the north of the application site, and the proposal will form part of this cluster. The proposal has been designed with a width of 10.13 metres, measuring the widest part, a length of 10.17 metres and a height of 5.74 metres to the ridge. The proposal has also been designed with both a flat roof and a dual pitch roof, with the flat roof being above the ground floor level, WC, workshop and store areas. Slide 6 shows the existing neighbouring boundary treatments, and the neighbouring outbuildings will assist in providing some shielding from this proposed development. Slide 7 illustrates where the proposed development will be located and provides a greater overall image of the proposed setting of the detached double garage outbuilding. Slide 8 shows the existing dormer bungalow of number 57A and the belt of trees located to the west of the site, and it is this belt of trees which the west facing elevation will look out to. Slide 11 demonstrates a cross-section drawing of the proposal and its height relationship with the existing neighbouring outbuildings and some of the neighbouring properties. Slide 12 is a roof light view plan to show views from inside the office space / store. Slide 13 is a cross-section plan for the detached double garage outbuilding. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the recommended conditions and informatives. Thank you.
Andrea Crawford, local resident, has requested to speak in opposition to the application. Is Andrea about? Hi Andrea. So you've got an opportunity to address the committee for up to 5 minutes. Please press the large button when you want to speak and press again to mute the microphone when you have concluded your submission. We'll remind you when you have 1 minute left. You can start.
Thank you very much for that, and good afternoon everyone. My name is Andrea Crawford and I am here to represent residents of Spring Lane, Sprotbrough. A garage was expected, had it been a normal storey garage built, not to incur problems to neighbourhoods, then there would have been no objection. However, the two-storey huge monstrosity can hardly be classed as a garage. French windows, Juliet balcony and a toilet. The height of it is unacceptable and will block views and sunsets of those directly behind, besides stopping light to gardens, plants, garage windows, greenhouses and solar panels. It looks to be built almost on boundaries. Surely there should be laws against distance from boundaries. We feel it would also devalue our homes. Who wants to buy looking out onto a white, concrete, modern garage dwelling? The plans of the large bungalow, which is already there, and owned by the people who are proposing the garage. It shows boundary trees on the plan, and these have never been planted. I think it was the idea to obscure our views in the first place. As I say, nothing has been done. So where would they plant if this garage dwelling was built as proposed? Trees were cut down for the bungalow to be erected. Beautiful trees that had taken years and years to grow, and we don't want to lose any more. The bungalow is a blot on the landscape and can be seen all the way down Spring Lane. A large garage the size of a house would ruin things even more. All residents down that side of Spring Lane moved there for the beautiful backdrop and outlook. If they wanted to look at a large, white, modern building, they would have bought on a new housing estate. The planning application for the bungalow wasn't opposed by local residents at the time for reasons including extreme old age and working away from home. 2 emails were sent, but they were not considered due to being sent to the wrong area of the planning department. And what's happened to the 15-year plan, which was supposed to prevent back building? The proposal here is supposed to be for a garage, but in fact, due to the size of the building, it could easily be mistaken for a private dwelling in style and size. The residents of 57A Spring Lane have been observed taking photographs down our drives. I assume for another large garage which was built next door to myself, and it's been up many, many years.
1 minute.
And therefore, none of us who were there, who then didn't live there, so we couldn't put our views in. Thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you, Ms Crawford. I will now ask the committee members if they wish to ask any questions in relation to the submission. No questions? Right. Councillor Cynthia Ransom and Councillor Oliver Blower have requested to speak in objection to this item. You have 10 minutes to address the committee collectively, councillors. Is Oliver about?
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm sorry, Oliver has been delayed, so my apologies for that, Chair.
Well, we'll start clock when you're ready then, Cynthia. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Cynthia Ransom, Councillor for Sprotber Ward. Mr Chairman, members of the Planning Committee, I am here today before you to support the 14 residents of Spring Lane, Sprotborough, who have objected to the planning proposal before you, reference 57A, Spring Lane, 25/01-437-full. The residents feel the building is overly large in size and height, thus blocking residents' lights and views. This application, if goes ahead, will be a blot on the landscape, and for the two residents particularly, who are here today and who have spoke so eloquently, will have a big light problem. They are enjoying views of greenery, and now they will be looking onto a big expanse of a building which represents a warehouse. Spring Lane is a particularly green area where people enjoy their gardens, nature and wildlife, and it is all helping for the people's well-being. It has been feared that the size of this building at some time later may be used as a dwelling, although appreciating that the planner has taken this into consideration. It is an overwhelming feeling down Green Lane that down Spring Lane that the building is too large and too high, and ask the committee to reflect this in their decision today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cynthia. Does any committee members wish to ask any questions of the councillor? Committee, just to make you aware, Mr. Lewis Keane, the agent for these plans, is available. Would anybody like to ask Mr. Keane any questions regarding this plan? Councillor Dennis, when we get Mr. Keane down. Thank you, Mr. Keane, for attending. We've just gone through some statements from councillors. We're not asking you to speak, but there is some questions that councillors would like to address with you, if that's okay. When they speak to you and they're finished talking, if you press the large red button on the microphone, that'll turn your microphone on so you can address the committee. And when you finish, if you turn it back off, so that they can address you back. Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Keane, some of the concerns that the residents and ward councillor made was that after the building has been built, it could then be reasonably turned into a residential property afterwards with the size and the internal dimensions. Do you know whether it's the owner's intent to do that at some point in the future?
No, all that I'm aware is that he's using it for a garage and a home office. That's all I've been told.
Councillor
Hi, it mentions in the proposal it's going to be a workshop. So what sort of things will be happening within the workshop?
I believe it's just a store and a workshop. He's a bit of a carpenter himself, so he's just going to do the odd bit of carpentry in there, I assume.
Any more councillors? Committee members will now go into debate. Does any member wish to comment on the report or ask the planning case officer any questions? Councillor Cox.
How close is this proposed development to the boundary of, or how close is it to the next building?
we don't have the precise measurement of the distance from the boundary. Councillor Cox, what I would say is that there's nothing in policy terms that requires it to be offset by a particular amount. It's all about whether or not that relationship is acceptable when you take into account proximity of the boundary relative to scale, footprint and height of the building overall.
Is that, I mean, we know that if it was a building that was going to be residential, there would be a distancing. Is that different because it is not going to be residential?
Yep, so the different rules apply depending on the type of use of the building. So with residential properties, you'll see policy requirements about back-to-back distances to protect privacy, that kind of thing. Whereas because this is an established residential use already, you don't have to apply the same standards. What you do have to do is make sure you're satisfied that those arrangements are acceptable. So position of windows relative to the neighbouring properties and so on are still relevant, but you don't have to adhere to the same requirements. The other point to mention in that respect that's important is obviously existing residential properties have certain permitted development rights where they can build out buildings and extensions up to certain sizes. So it's comparing what you can do under permitted development rights to proposals when they come forward in this way.
Thank you, Chair. From the designs that I've got, I think the workshop space will be on the ground floor level towards the northern end of the property. This then directly backs onto what looks to be the garage of 69 Spring Lane, as well as the gardens of 67, 61 Spring Lane as well, probably actually 59. Has there been any noise assessments made as to what the permitted level of noise could be? Because if what the agent said is it's the owner's a carpenter, I'd imagine there'll be a substantial amount of noise coming from that room that could then affect the residents in those gardens.
There's no noise assessment that's been carried out in respect of this because the proposal is for a use that's incidental to the main house, so a level of usage that you would expect similar to if you had a garden shed and you were doing some works in there. So you wouldn't need to go to the extent of requiring a specific noise survey for that. What we're proposing as part of the conditions is that the use of the building can only be incidental to the main dwelling house, so they couldn't, for example, start up a business from that building without needing planning permission separately. So at that level of use, you wouldn't be requiring a noise survey on that basis.
I'm at odds then with what the agent has said, because if it's a carpenter or someone that has a carpentry business, it would be significantly different than me or anyone else doing a bit of work in the shed on a weekend. It'd be predominantly, I'd imagine, during working hours. So, Emma, could you clarify the condition then on the business use permitted?
Absolutely, yeah. And if the owner of the property wanted to start using that for business use for whatever reason, then he would need planning permission to do that, just to be absolutely clear. And condition 5, which is at page 184 of your papers, requires that the detached building hereby approved shall not be occupied at any time other than for purposes ancillary to the main residential dwelling house. We could add some additional words just to make that abundantly clear in terms of no trade or business carried out there from there, just to make absolutely sure that that's clear and precise in terms of the wording of the condition, if committee wishes to add that.
Yes, please, if we could have that. I was trying to think of something more robust, but yeah, I'll allow. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions, committee? Is there a proposal to grant planning permission subject to the imposition of planning conditions? Councillor Kidger, have we got a seconder? Councillor Ward. Right, I will move to vote. Please indicate by raising your hand for the development. So that's unanimous then. So the planning permission's been granted for 25/01437/FUL. Thank you. Right, because there's been a change of proceedings, can we have 5 minutes to clear the chamber for anybody who doesn't want to be in for the next two acts? Thank you. Right, welcome back everybody. Members will have noted that applications 1 and 2 on the agenda today relate to the same application site, albeit the applications are different. Before we consider each of these in turn, I'm going to ask Stacey Cutler, Principal Legal Officer, to say a few words about how we need to approach the decision making on each of these, just so members can be completely clear in their own minds and for the benefit of any members of public to assist their understanding. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, members. As you've seen from your agenda pack, the first two applications before you today are for housing at the same application site. Item 1 is for up to 1,200 dwellings and, as set out in the report, is fully policy compliant. Item 2 is for up to 1,400 dwellings on the same site and is policy compliant, save for a deviation in respect of policy 6 of the local plan, which contains a mechanism to link the delivery of housing to the number of jobs created within the airport policy area. As your report set out in detail, the landscape has changed since Policy 6 was formulated and the local plan was adopted, and the planning officer considers that other material considerations outweigh the technical non-compliance with Policy 6 in relation to Item 2. Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 requires decisions to be made in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Decision makers must therefore assess an application against the development plan policies and weigh any other material considerations in the balance. In terms of your approach to determination of these applications, you are being asked to determine two separate and slightly different applications in respect of the same site, and each must be considered on its own merits. These are not competing proposals in the sense that they are alternatives. Both are recommended for approval, but clearly only one of the schemes can ultimately be developed, should members be minded to grant the applications. It is not an exercise in deciding which scheme you might prefer to come forward. Both are recommended for approval, and it is permissible, therefore, for members to resolve to either, 1, grant both applications in accordance with the officer's recommendations, or 2, refuse both applications, subject to robust and defensible planning reasons, noting that decisions which are contrary to officer recommendation must clearly outline the material planning considerations relied upon in reaching such a decision, or 3, grant one and refuse one of the applications. These applications will be presented in the order they were validated and will be considered in turn. I hope that assists in terms of guiding members on their approach to these applications. Thank you, Chair.
Is that clear for everybody before? Right. I present application number 1, 25/00136/OUTA. Outline planning application with environmental assessment with all matters reserved except external vehicle highway access for residential development, use class C3. Provisions of co-working hubs with land allocated for a single form entry primary school if required, including the demolition of Warren House Farm and the provision of drainage, including SUDS, public open space with children's play space, enhancements to existing footpaths and tracks, new footpaths and cycleways, including the creation of an active travel corridor at land south of Hurst Lane, Oakley. Mark Sewell, the planning case officer, will introduce this item. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, sorry. Applications for outline application with all matters reserved except for access, as you say, for up to 1,200 dwellings at land south of Hurst Lane. So just go through some slides just to set some context for members who we obviously went on the site visit last Friday. So this is the site location, as you can see, large site, over 70 hectares in size, located on the east side of Hurst Lane. You've got Great North Road, Bawtry Road running along the western site boundary, the settlement of Oakley to the north, Great Yorkshire Way also to the north there, and obviously the airport to the eastern side of the application site. The application site excludes the woodlands within the centre of the site and really just encompasses the arable agricultural fields making up the majority of the application site. I'll come back to these photographs later. Say members were on the site visit on Friday, so you will be aware of the appearance of the site and the characteristics. So this is the local plans allocations for the airport policy area, as it were. The application site, as we term as Hurstwood, the housing development site, encompasses sites, allocated sites DSA 02 and 03, as you can see on the plan there. DSA 02 allocates an initial 280 houses at the airport. DSA 03 provides the balance of 920 dwellings, and that is envisaged to be delivered alongside the delivery of jobs within the airport policy area. There's a bespoke mechanism in the policy which allows for X amount of houses to come forward alongside the jobs on the site. The reasoning behind the airport policy area is to try and provide a new sustainable community around the airport, and the allocations show the further uses around here. So just to the north of the application site is DSA 01, that's access from the airport access road on Great Yorkshire Way. DSA 01 is known as the Plaza, and that is a new town centre. this site has outline planning permission. It includes a mix of commercial and community uses, which is envisaged to serve the new housing at DSA 02 and 03, as well as existing settlements to the north around Auckley and the old RAF housing site. To the east of the application site in blue is EMP 05. That's an allocated employment site. Again, this has outline planning permission for up to 3.5 square million feet of employment uses. Further to the east, DSA 04, that is airside employment and operational development, which is hopefully will come forward in the near future. You can also see in darker blue hatched EMP 15, further allocated employment land. The majority of this has now been built out, as members will have seen as we did the site visit. So, for context, the Policy 6 envisages this range of use clustered around the operational airport. And so this plan goes some way to showing you what is allocated, what has outline planning permission, what has been built out, as well as what you saw on the site visit. So the housing element, DSA 02 and 03, is kind of the remaining piece of the jigsaw to bring forward Policy 6. This is a kind of a more kind of graphic representation of the, as we call Gateway East, is the other name for the airport policy areas you'll know, and that shows the Hurstwood housing, the EMP 05, I should have said, the Innovation Quarter known as IQ, the Central Plaza to the north, and then the remaining development around the site there. So the application site is in outline form with means of access to be agreed. The applicants are providing an illustrative master plan, as you can see on the site there. 3 points of access proposed. There to the north of the site off Hurst Lane, another access on the junction of Hurst Lane on Great North Road to the western extremity, and then to the southern end at the junction with High Common Lane. So in terms of the principle of development, as Stacey, the legal officer, outlined, the application's entirely in accordance with the provisions of Policy 6, in that there would be a mechanism included within a Section 106 agreement which would limit the delivery of housing beyond the initial 280 to delivery of jobs within the airport policy area. On that basis, we've got no objections in principle to the proposal. So that comes along to more site-specific matters. So, as I've mentioned, as you can see, the applicants provide an illustrative master plan to show how development could come forward on the site. This has been backed up with a detailed design and access statement, which provides an assessment of the existing character of the surrounding area, how the development can be brought forward in terms of different character areas across the site, street typologies, location of public open space, that kind of thing. Quite a high level of detail within that design and access statement. And the Council's urban design team have been consulted on the application, and they've raised no concerns in terms of the approach to the site layout and how they see the site going forward. To back up the illustrative master plan and to provide a bit more surety with the development, the applicants have also provided a series of parameters plans which would be conditioned, which set out certain requirements of any future reserve matters applications. Probably most fundamentally, active travel parameters plan. So this sets out the pedestrian and cycle linkages through the site with fixed points going out towards existing developments and the proposed employment site, and how the site can be accessed and navigated. This is just kind of to show the kind of joined up thinking to provide a connected wider airport policy area. The main active travel corridor is along the eastern boundary of the site. The reason for that is obviously you've got the large employment site to the east as well, so that active travel corridor will help people who kind of work and live between the two sites. And then connections are shown out onto the surrounding network, also crucially through up to the north to the plaza development and through to the existing housing and settlement of Auckley. This parameter plan just kind of shows you the land use and green infrastructure parameters. The kind of beigey colours is the residential, The bright green is public open space and green infrastructure that's proposed to be provided on the site. In addition to all of the design information that's been provided, and as I say, there's been no objections from the urban design team, Policy 6 also requires a design code to be developed for the housing application site. So that is being worked up in collaboration with the council's urban design team, and that would put a bit more further meat on the bones of design standards that would have to be met across the site. As I say, means of access are being formally agreed as part of the application site, part of the application. No objections have been received from the council's highways team. They've raised no objections to the siting of the proposed access points, nor to the illustrative master plan, and show it in terms of the approach to street design. Obviously, the main points of access would have to get technical approval through the council's highway, for the council as the highways authority as well. So there would be that extra step which would involve road safety audits, detailed technical designs of those junctions. That would have to be agreed separately through the planning process as well. Applicants have also provided a transport assessment, and the council's transportation team have been consulted and raised no objection to the scheme in terms of the impact of traffic generated on the local road network. There will be mitigation required at some of the local junctions at certain points after a certain amount of development has been delivered on the site. There at the Great North Road Hurst Lane Junction, Great North Road Littleworth Lane Junction, and at Great North Road in Parrott's Corner. Again, the council signals team and transportation team have looked at the proposals and the mitigation, and they're comfortable with the proposed works and the trigger for those works to come forward. In terms of the wider highway network, we've also consulted National Highways in terms of the impact on Junction 3 of the M18. As you'll know, Junction 3 gets a lot of traffic, obviously, into Doncaster and also from Great Yorkshire Way. And so we've had a few meetings and consultations with National Highways, and they now raise no objections to the scheme on the basis that the applicants will be provided a commuted sum to contribute towards future junction improvements at that junction. Those junction improvements aren't just necessary for this development, it's for the local plan allocation as a whole and perhaps future development. So it's essentially a larger scheme to future-proof that junction and help the borough, the city bring forward its allocated development over the next few years. In terms of further transport issues, South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority, SIMCA, have provided comments in their role looking at public transport issues. Again, raising no objections, the illustrative master plan provides scope for a bus route through the site as well, which is welcomed. They have requested that financial contributions are provided by the applicants to improve bus stops and to extend existing bus services servicing the site. They'd be secured through the Section 106 agreement. The applicants have also provided drainage and flood risk assessment as part of the application. The site's in flood zone 1, so low flood risk area, so no objections in principle there. The council's drainage team have been consulted and again raised no objections. The drainage strategy sets out the approach for both foul and surface water disposal. Surface water strategy has been assessed on a worst case scenario, so that's assuming that the majority of attenuation of the site will be accommodated through detention basins. No objections, as I say, from the drainage team in principle, but there will be a condition to ensure that those detailed drainage designs are provided as part of future reserve matters applications. In terms of foul water disposal, the strategy is to have an on-site pumping station which would then pump the foul waste north to the nearest Severn Trent connection point to the north of the application site. Again, no objections received from Severn Trent to that approach. As mentioned previously, the majority of the site is kind of arable agricultural land at the moment. It's the intention of the proposal to retain the vast majority of trees and hedgerows and woodland across the site. So no objections received overall from the council's ecologist or trees. where trees are due to be removed, it is to allow the formation of access points into the site, and the tree survey shows that the majority of trees that are due to come out, not that there's many, are not of any kind of special standard. The application's obviously been accompanied by a suite of ecological surveys, and they've been assessed by the council's ecologist. There's obviously going to be an inevitable loss of some on-site habitats on a scheme of this size, but that's kind of obviously accepted at this level of development. The loss of trees, woodlands, hedgerows and ditches has been minimised through the design of the scheme. The applicants have also provided a biodiversity net gain assessment, as a scheme will be subject to the mandatory 10% net gain requirement, and the proposal show that the required mitigation can be accommodated on site, but there are conditions which are required to ensure that these details are agreed together with the future management arrangements for that created habitat. A point that was raised on site actually in terms of noise impact, we went back and had a further look at the environmental assessment and noise survey information that came through. So say no objection from the environmental health officer, and the condition is recommended for the kind of properties that might be affected by traffic noise along the Great North Road boundary. The noise assessment that was provided did include the air traffic as a baseline as well. There are kind of noise contours associated with the airport, and they kind of run north and south from the runway, and so the housing is not kind of within those noise contours. Equally, the noise assessment did include the adjacent employment site, IQ, as a potential noise source as well. So that was within the thinking of the environmental health team when they provided their comments. Education, so the application description does include land for a one-form entry primary school within it. Council's education team have been consulted. On the basis of the situation in the local area, they feel the best way of mitigating the effects of this proposal is for a commuted sum to provide additional school places in schools in the locality, and so that will be secured through the Section 106 agreement. No further objections have been received from consultees. The application was also accompanied with archaeological information, ground condition information as well, and no objections received from South Yorkshire Archaeology or the Council's pollution control team. So the recommendation is to grant outline planning permission for the scheme, subject to a Section 106, which would include within it as heads of terms the contribution to primary and secondary school places, bus service improvements, bus stop facilities, junction improvements, biodiversity net gain monitoring, and a travel plan bond as well, and also the mechanism to tie the delivery of housing to jobs within the airport policy area, and the standard 23% affordable housing across the site as well. So that's the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We've received requests to speak from Mr Gareth Finch, the applicant for Peel Holdings, and from David Diggle, the agent for the applicant, in support of the application. This is now your opportunity to address the committee collectively for up to 5 minutes. Please press the large red button when you want to speak, and again to mute the microphone when you have concluded your submission. We'll give you 1 minute warning when you're halfway through when you're through your speech. So would you like to commence?
Thank you, Chair, members and officers for the detailed report and more detailed presentation than I expected as well. So much of what I was going to say, I don't think I need to say. I should say also we've got a number of design team members here to assist with questions should they be required ultimately. So I'm Gareth Finch. I don't think we'll need David Diggle to speak unless it's in answer to questions. Members will have seen on the site visit that this is the final piece, as Mr Sewell said, of a jigsaw bringing together employment, residential and town centre uses, all in accordance with local plan allocations adjacent to the airport site. The aim is to develop a genuinely sustainable proposition with full active travel connectivity between land uses and across the residential site, such that people will have the opportunity to move around the site without the need to rely on a car. I'm going to leave it at that in terms of the proposals and just tell you a bit about the background to how we've got to this point. That was through the local plan process, which was rigorous, with public consultations in 2015, 2018, 2019, followed by an examination in front of an inspector in 2020, and adoption of the plan in 2021. So a very thorough, lengthy process. The overall proposals, which include residential on this site, was shaped by a master plan first developed in 2017 and consulted on in spring of 2018. And that was a master plan for what's now become the airport policy area. This consultation in spring 2018 generated over 1,600 responses, over 90% supportive of the overall mixed-use vision. Half the respondents said they were local residents. There were no significant opposition to the site allocations during the course of the local plan consultation that then followed partly in parallel, whilst consultation on the current proposals, including at pre-application stages, generated little by way of objections from members of the public or statutory consultees. For a scheme of this scale, in our experience, that's quite unprecedented. Policy 6 also required a more detailed master plan exercise for the airport policy area and the site allocations. That's referenced in the report at paragraph 1.9. This was completed in the summer and autumn of 2024 and explains how existing and planned developments will be integrated and connected. As Mark alluded to on the presentation, at the core of that is a thorough network of active travel routes across the site and through into the sites next door. As also mentioned, the majority of the, if not all of the other sites and allocations already have planning permission, and this is the last one to come through this process. We've worked closely with officers to design a cohesive, inclusive, high-quality community with significant open space and children's play space, all fully integrated with the adjoining land uses. I'm going to skip beyond the details because they've already been outlined in the breadth of Mr. Sewell's presentation. One thing I would say in respect to the section 106 is that I've heard other examples given within the city where perhaps there's been instances where contributions haven't found their way to the intended source or recipient, shall I say. In our view, we always have 106 drafted in such a way that it dictates and limits how and where that money should be used, and that's for the purpose it's intended, the place it's intended. And with that, I'd simply move on to say that, as has been outlined by myself and by the case officer, the proposals demonstrate that there are no technical or environmental considerations that stand against this set of proposals, which fully accord with the local plan and NPPF, and I therefore respectfully request that you follow the recommendation and grant permission subject to conditions and the 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair, members.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. I now ask the committee members if they wish to ask any questions in relation to the submission. Councillor Cox.
Hello, Gareth.
Good afternoon, Councillor Cox.
I think I mean, obviously we know about the consultations that happened right at the very beginning of all this because we took part, as many residents did. The bits that leave me a bit bamboozled, obviously your application is within the local plan that's here. This application fits the local plan that's here. But I think within that consultation it was mentioned that there would be a school or there would be education, not that there might be. And I think that bit where it would be a sustainable place with a school and with, I think it were also mentioned about community spaces, you know, potential parish centres, all of these things were in that consultation at that time. And I find it difficult if it isn't in this application now when that was the original consultation that, as you rightly said, was on the main supported. So why has the school allocation been reduced to a contribution?
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I presume when you're talking about the consultation, you mean on this application? Okay, not the previous ones. We brought the application forward on the back of the consultation with the community and residents, and we presented an either-or option, which is why the submissions say quite clearly that, and the description of development I think also mentions this, that included on the application site is a site and a piece of land that could be made available for a primary school should it be required, but more to the point, should it be the preferred option. We've then entered consultation on the application itself, and we've had comments back from education officers and had several follow-up meetings with those officers and the case officer and policy officers. The upshot of that process is that we have been told by officers that all things considered, I won't use the phrase on balance, all things considered from an educational needs and provision perspective, the option that is to be preferred by the Education Authority is money to be made available to fund the expansion of existing schools rather than the funding of a school on the application site itself. We're not really in a position to disagree with that and try to impose a different solution on the experts.
Councillor Cox.
You mentioned another application that we're aware of, that a recommendation was made to provide a parcel of land for education that mitigated the contribution. That also ended up being wrong, and it ended up being that alterations had to be made to an existing school to take on the extra number of young people. I can see education's here, but I'm confused as to why education would be saying, no, we don't need an extra school, but please pay for an extension to another school that's already, its grounds and its capacity is getting smaller. Round it, I mean, we all moan about parking and things like that. It's only going to get worse. Why, when we've got an opportunity to do something that is brand new that would sustain and support the community, are we saying no?
This is to the applicants, not to the panel yet.
I think Councillor Cox, that's probably a question best put to the education. Yeah, when we finish this bit. Yeah, thanks.
Any more questions, committee? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, the Great North Road that obviously extends across the site's southern boundary, but a small section of that boundary also fronts onto High Common Lane. So part of the active travel, is there any plans to put a footpath in? Because going towards Austerfield, the other way, Finningley, there is no footpaths at all in that area. Has that been discussed or talked about?
Mr. Sewell referenced an dedicated active travel corridor that would run from that junction, so from the High Common Lane and Great North Road junction, all the way up the eastern boundary of this site and the western boundary of the consented employment site to the east. As part of the consent that's in place for the employment site to the east, when that site is developed, there would be a scheme, or there is a scheme, which has gone pretty much all the way through the formal Section 278 process with the Highway Authority, that would incorporate on the north side of High Common Lane a dedicated, segregated, combined footpath and cycleway. I'm going to look to my right and just check with my transport consultant that I've got all that right, and he's nodding. So yes, there is a proposal, albeit part of the consent on the adjacent plot, for that connectivity to the east to be improved by active travel means.
Any more questions, committee? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. In regards to the transport links, is there a link road from the estate through to the plaza? So I understand there's plans for a petrol station at the plaza and supermarket as well. In my view, it would make more sense to have a vehicle link through there so that people can call a shop or petrol station and just go home quickly.
Thank you, Councillor. The nature of that connection is something that we wrestled with, both within our team and also in consultation with urban design and highways and transport officers within the council. It did start off life as a combined vehicular and active travel connection. But the more we got into the detail, including consultations with the community at pre-application stage as well, the more we arrived at the view, which I believe is shared by officers, that will be best, that the community will be best served by making that the widest dedicated combined active travel link between this site and the town centre Central Plaza site. So it's a long way of saying it's been given a lot of thought, and I accept that. Yeah, I accept that if people want to just go to the petrol station or go through to the plaza site for a larger shop, they would have to drive a few hundred metres further out onto the external network. But what Mr. Diggle just slid on my nose there was a reminder that there's a term that in our industry you hear a lot, and it's something to be avoided, which is rat runs. So thank you for that reminder, David.
Any more questions, committee? Do the officers wish to clarify any matters of fact prior to members going to debate?
No, thank you, Chair.
Committee members, we will now go into debate. Does any member wish to comment on the report or ask the planning case officer any questions? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. I wanted to get in here straight away, Mark, just to clarify. On page 62 of the report, at point 8.2, I'll just give you a second. Yeah. The first condition, it says, all applications for approval of the reserved matters shall be made to the local planning authority before the expiration of 15 years from the date of this permission, and the commencement of development made no later than the expiration of 3 years from the final approval of the reserved matters. To me, that reads, from the point that the committee accepts officers' recommendations to approve, there could be 15 years then before a reserved matters application is made, and then a further 3 years after that application has been approved before until development can commence. So we're at about 18 years from this date, potentially with further delays as well. Can you just clarify that?
I think you picked that up correct. I think the intention of the condition was that all application for reserved matters should be submitted before 15 years from the date. So obviously with a large scale development like this, then you anticipate that you're not going to have all your reserved matters submitted in the normal 3 or 5 years. And then they would have to be implemented 3 years from that final date after that 15 years. So we can have a look at the wording, tighten that up if that's needed to be.
What I'm thinking is, so if we call it, for the sake of argument, 18 years, all of the monetary contributions and different indexation of things and linked to various different properties occupied could have, in theory, an extra 18 years from where we are now on that. So the criteria for the school placements and the need for that, or the money for Junction 3 improvement works, we could be talking at least 18 years from where we are now, by which point we could be in an entirely different world. I know that the Junction 3 works are talked about quite a lot at the moment on different projects, and I know public infrastructure spending projects do take a while to come out, but I would expect by 18 years' time that's done and finished. It's difficult for me as someone on the planning committee to then imagine what we make now and committing it in 18 years' time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you. The 106 contributions are based, their trigger points are based on the delivery of housing, so it's not years. So the delivery of housing is obviously the impact of the proposal. So, the impact is not necessarily in 2 years after grant planning permission. The impact will be when 200 houses are built. So that's the trigger points that are included within the 106, and they are index linked. But I take your point in terms of a different scenario in terms of perhaps junction improvements, and kind of colleagues in transportation might be able to give you a bit more of an update as to timescales behind that and how contributions can be used. Yeah.
I think lastly on that point, with the size of this development and the number of properties that it's going to come out with, it's going to be building on there is going to be happening for at least a decade, right, is my assumption. So it's a long time scale we're having to think about when it in terms of the 106 agreement. I'm just making sure I understood that fully before making any decision on the application.
I think just some of the more details around the triggers, I believe education colleagues will be able to confirm. We have been discussing with the applicants in terms of including within the 106 trigger points the amounts of money that would be required at different phases of development to ensure that the initial build costs are kind of met, and so that education comfortable with when money will be delivered. Equal in terms of the highways improvements, that's kind of one trigger. So it's 400 houses essentially for off-site house. So whether that's in 3 years' time or 8 years' time, 400 houses is where the impact will be felt. So that's why that trigger is worded in that way. That's on the local road network. So we can maybe get a bit more detail in terms of Junction 3 improvements, because the contribution here, whilst welcomed, it's a huge scheme. So that's also subject to external funding as well. So yeah, I do take your point.
I do have further thoughts, but I'll let other councillors come in before I come on to those. Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Education. Can you just follow up on what I've already said, please?
Thank you. In terms of school provision, we look very carefully about how to progress, given the history of the development and history of other developments that we're aware of from elsewhere. And in terms of securing a site and securing funding, we've had other examples, as we're aware, where we've secured a site, but we haven't had the funding to develop that site out. A number of factors were considered about what we do in terms of delivering that education curriculum and education provision. We're looking upwards of 310 houses for this development, 310 pupils for this development, which is a substantial number of pupils, but it is going across both primary and secondary, so the landscape's changed considerably. We've already expanded Hayfield Secondary School, but we would look to do that again from this development, so we wouldn't necessarily be looking at just a primary school, it's primary and secondary provision. In terms of delivery of education, we assess the site. The maximum extent is 2 miles from existing provision that we have in the area, which includes one primary school and one secondary school. So we have provisions in both of those. It's no more than 2 miles on any point of the estate, a shorter distance at the near end of the estate. 2 miles is significant because that's a statutory walking distance for children under 8. It's 3 miles for over 8. So from an early years provision, it's within that scope. So reflecting on previous history, we've looked to secure a substantial sum of money. I believe this development is £6.6 million, so that's a substantial amount of money. We have or are working on a current extension of a school, which is just short of that figure. Index linked, it may be that we're looking upwards of that figure. So taking those things into account, we have 2 very successful schools close by, both rated good at Ofsted and both popular and oversubscribed. So taking those things into account, building on that existing excellent provision that we already have, rather than create a new entity on the estate, which could could only serve primary because it's not big enough to do primary and secondary, would potentially destabilise those schools. But equally, from a Department for Education point of view, the consultation has always been that a one-form entry model is not their preferred model. The funding of schools is that it's predominantly, almost 90+% of the funding is pupil-led. So to provide a one-form entry school is not perhaps the most efficient model given where we are in terms of budgets and so on. So building on an existing provision makes it a much more efficient delivery model. And then equally, in terms of the both successful schools, we already have in place a really successful leadership structure. We have a successful SEM provision in those schools. So, for example, a new primary school would need its own SEN provision. It would need its own officers to do that. And building on the existing properties that we already have, we believe that would be a preferred way forward. In terms of those two developments, we are working on assessments on both. We're aware of the restrictions on Hayfield Lane Primary School, given that the site restrictions there, and we've done site visits to both. We're yet to conclude our final decisions in terms of which development we would use, but we do have an option to expand the secondary school to include a primary provision on site. The secondary school has a substantial amount of site and does have available room to provide a through school, so they would have the primary provision on site, and then those children could continue to the secondary school. So they're the two options that we would look at. Within that funding envelope that's been provided, we believe we could achieve that at either site.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but I know you're the professional, or professionals, but I'm also allowed to disagree. You look at the numbers, we look at the people that are trying to access these schools, people that are outside and trying to get in them, the other things that are around it, the schools, Hayfield Senior, Hayfield Primary, New College, all of those are in one space. You can, well, I'm sure you'll be aware, and traffic colleagues will be aware, there's a lot of traffic movements around that area. Surely, there's a potential for having this entity that could be a new school, we will be grabbing it with both hands. Not saying that, no, we can't. Now, the population, as we know, this is one application. I'm sure there's going to be more. Now, this one, thankfully, is in the local plan. This one is noted in this document. The other ones aren't or may not be. Who's going to provide education for those kids? Where's the tipping point? And at what point does Hayfield, that has just had a new roof, it is council owned, it is a council asset, but there were no money to repair its roof. They lost a library. It's now been repaired, but that was another one that was just being kicked down the street. So, with the greatest respect, thank you for your comments, but to me, that's my thoughts is we need that provision, and we need it yesterday. Like my colleague here said 18 years, that before everything's built out, before everything's seen, we're in a different world there. There's a lot more people that have moved. Hopefully the airport is its employment things. But thank you. I'm waffling. I'm done. Thank you.
Just a final, sorry, Councillor, just a final comment from myself, if I may. In terms of the funding that's available, the development of the site and the amount, the trigger point of 6.6 million, just over, is sustainable for extending the property. To build a new primary school, it's well over £10 million, and we don't have that magnitude of funding. So whilst that's not the main driving factor, it is an important factor for us.
Anyone else? Councillor Kidger.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to back up what Steve just said. You know, you're going about primary school pupils within, 2-mile walk. The parents aren't going to walk 200 yards. They're going to get in the cars and they're going to drive. Now, the area that we live in, This is a major problem now. It's going to get worse, and I just want to back what Steve said. He's dead right.
It's Councillor Dennis.
Thank you for your answers, Neil. I will also back up Councillors Cox and Kidger on the points they've made. The apex, that corner at Hurst Lane and Hayfield Lane, is going to be an incredibly busy junction if the airport gets the numbers it wants to get. And if we're talking about putting an extension either on Hayfield or at the secondary school, it's going to the roads are going to be over capacity. I'm going to echo Steve. I respect the professional's opinion on this and what highways officers will come back and say as well. However, I really don't think this is the best decision for the council to pursue, to ignore what the developer has rightly put forward in terms of a site for a new primary school, and to ignore that and go for an extension of an existing school. I do not think that's the right decision to go for. It doesn't require a response, by the way.
Any more committee? Is there a proposal to grant planning permission subject to the imposition?
Sorry, Chair, I do have a few other questions and points.
Sorry, Councillor Dennis.
On other matters, highways, the access point. I'm confused about the access point. I believe the plans show it's on I'm talking about the Hurst Lane access point. That it's on the corner as there's like a slight bend on Hurst Lane, and I can't quite tell on the plans if it's there or if it's further a little bit closer to Great North Road.
The detail of any junction will be looked at technically and assessed for visibility. So if you have any issues in terms of its suitability or meeting design standards or anything like that, then believe me, it will meet all the standards. So be assured that there'll be nothing that will affect safety of pedestrians, cyclists and motorists. So the exact detail is still to be looked at and agreed, and I'm sure Michael also backed me up, but those type of things are done as part of the details, so it will be fully assessed and approved appropriately.
Not got the plan up at the moment, Councillor Dennis, sorry, but the access, I think we're on site when we looked at it, where the public footpath is shown just before the bend, it is just shown to the north of that, so further away from Great Yorkshire Way. So it's on there. And that footpath is being retained as
yeah. That's why I was sort of confused, because I think on the plans it just show it like on the small bend in the road, but I take Andy's point that highways will do their jobs in terms of the access point.
It will have to go through road safety audits, etc. So yeah.
And on that point as well, the speed on that road, it's either a 50 or a national speed limit as well, and just making sure that that's been taken into consideration, whether there's any speed reductions planned as part of the development.
We never design for any potential speed reduction, so we only design for the speed limit the road is now. So we don't look at anything else apart from the existing situation. So, people are well aware that all designs are built and based on the existing speed limit it is now. If it is reduced, then it's only an improvement.
Can I probe on that a bit more? So, on the access on Great North Road, there's the planned 2 roundabouts, corner of Hurst Lane and Great North Road, and then further down Great North Road going onto the site. So is that planned with the existing speed limit there, which is 60? And so in between those two roundabouts, it will continue to be 60 miles an hour.
You're probing me on detail that I've not got a plan and I'm using my memory. And being very old is difficult to actually remember what is being planned where. So all I'll again reiterate, Councillor Dennis, is that everything will be assessed on the speed limit it is now, yeah, and all the standards will be met for the speed limit the road is now. So we don't consider any potential reductions in the future.
Councillor Kidger is first.
Yeah, just a daft one. On the proposal description 1.2, the last item, it goes on about cycling, walking and micro-mobility. What's micro-mobility?
It's a good question.
You do have the, I'm going to say you do have the mobility scooters, etc., so people getting around.
I think it's referring to a battery-powered scooter.
Yeah, okay. Will this have regard to the Highway Code and the Road Traffic Act? Battery-powered scooters are not allowed on pavements, they're not allowed on public land. So, any comments on that?
It's not a material consideration.
I think that would be a case for enforcement if it was the case.
Is that everything, Councillor Kidger? Councillor Cox had his hand up first.
Sorry, Bob. Right, speed. Sorry. How many fatalities has there been on Bawtry Road? Oh, sorry, Bob.
I've absolutely no idea without consulting the analysis and safety records.
I'm quite shocked by that, Andy, if I'm honest. But thank you.
You can go first, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, it was exactly the same question I was going to ask, because I use that road quite a lot, Great North Road, Bawtry Road, and I've got concerns because imminently there's planning applications coming up in Austerfield, and there's going to be an elite sports centre application coming up on Bawtry Road. So I was just wondering the same question, data on any accidents, serious accidents on that.
Unless Mike has the data, I don't actually remember that sort of data. I don't have it to hand. So unless it's actually on or within your pack, then I don't remember that sort of thing.
I'll just let Emma speak on this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. The only point I wanted to make in terms of the access arrangements, and Councillor Anderson mentioned applications that might come forward in future. If planning permission is granted for this application today, then those developments would need to take this into account as a committed development, so they'd need to account for the traffic that would be generated and make their own arrangements accordingly, so they'd need to take that into consideration at that point in time. Thank you.
I'd also just like to point out that every new junction has an independent road safety audit that actually looks at all the accidents that you're on about, Councillor Cox. So as part of any design, then that's how your question relating to safety, both yours, Councillor Anderson, will be assessed properly through an independent audit.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Andy. But when you've said that the design is done with the speed at this point in time, the speed outside Mount Pleasant is 60 mile an hour. There have been many fatalities outside there that are documented, and there are people that, in my previous profession of taxi drivers, have been killed. Now, that is, I find it, like I said, quite shocking that you didn't know that there had been accidents there, including fatalities. So I think my colleagues are right when they're asking about the speed and whether there was a potential restriction in speed on that road, because we were led to, or I was led to assume that it would be slowed down between the 2 points, and that isn't the case, obviously.
We don't look at reducing speed before a planning application is actually looked at, because it might not ever get built. So you can't foresee whatever's going to be built and put a speed limit in based upon something that is or maybe not going to be granted permission on. So that's why we don't ever look at or design something based on a premise in the future. We base it on what the design speed of the road is now.
And I thank you for that, Andy, but please give me grace. I'm just going to mention another application that has gone, and that is, sorry, Andy, is the Wildlife Park. And the Wildlife Park did get its speed amended. That road was taken, it was lowered in speed, and the reason for that was because of the roundabout and the design of the roundabout and all the stuff that went off there. So I'm just getting more and more confused.
I can't comment on other applications, Councillor Cox, you know that.
Councillor Dennis, you should...
I did. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. The first one, and I'll answer for Andy, it was going to be about the condition of High Common Lane and whether that meets acceptable standards for having a new access put on there, because it's quite a bumpy and single track road. However, from what Andy said before, it's unlikely he'll be able to provide a detailed answer on that, so I'll carry on for now. On the going back to what Mark said in his initial remarks about noise monitoring, when the airport opens, there will be a significant impact, my presumption, is on pollution levels, air quality, highways, noise and environmental health, and whether there are conditions in this application for reviewing those when the airport is open and then at periodic points before development takes place.
We've not included, the environmental statement has included within it the assumption of air traffic within it. So consultees have kind of commented on that basis. So kind of specifically in terms of noise, given that there's not shown to be any noise impacts because the housing sits outside of those noise contours, they've not recommended any conditions for additional noise mitigation.
I appreciate you talking about noise, Mark, but I'm also talking about pollution, air quality, highways and environmental health. They can say what they want now. The airport's not open now, but hopefully, or touch wood, it will be open, it will be thriving by the time any properties get built. So we're going to have an increased level of all of those when the airport, when these properties are there. So will there be a condition to monitor these impacts before any properties are made?
My understanding is that the environmental statement has kind of assumed an operational airport as part of its baseline information, which includes traffic generation and those issues that we've discussed. Again, as with the kind of the Junction 3 improvements and the discussion of national highways, all that information is based on the basis of an operational airport and the traffic associated with it. So that's kind of, an operational airport has kind of formed the baseline of the environmental statement as a committed development.
Have a minute.
Mark, I can't work on assumptions of what may or may not happen when the airport's open. And if it was written down in it, the assumption is no traffic will, there won't be any traffic impacts when the airport's opened. I still wouldn't believe that. So I'm sorry, I need to take a minute.
I think what I'm saying is, in terms of the transport assessment, there will be vehicle trips associated with an operational airport, and those vehicle trips have been assessed within the transport assessment. And that's kind of the approach to those different disciplines.
But will there be monitoring when the airport is opened and prior to properties being built?
There is around travel plan monitoring and trip generation within section 106, so there will be trip generation is being monitored as part of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may just come in as well. What part of your consideration today, Councillor Dennis, is whether or not you think that any additional conditions need to be imposed on the recommended conditions that we're looking at here today. So if that's something that you think based on what Mark said around, you know, the environmental assessment, which considers all of those things in the round and on a worst case scenario basis, we're looking at reserve matters that will come forward over a significant period of time. If the committee considered that there did need to be some sort of change to any of those conditions, then it's perfectly within your gift to look at those in detail and make recommendations to us. So if you wanted to look at any of those in more detail, then that is something that you're able to do.
Thank you, Emma, and apologies, Chair, for cutting in. I would greatly value further monitoring information when the airport is opened and before properties are built on pollution, air quality, highways, noise and other environmental health factors, because this is an area where there is substantial development and residents don't know what the baselines of any of these sort of things are with an operational airport anymore. So at the very least, I would like the council to monitor this going forward.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. And I mean, just to be completely frank, I mean, this application that is in front of us with the local plan, as I've said before, it's supportive. The education thing, I cannot support this application if the education provision isn't in it. Now, the other bits are the airport and this application are fully intertwined. One, it's only there, that policy's there because of the airport. The employment figures are there because of the airport. Everything is there because of the airport. To not understand the impact of what those traffic movements at its full potential and where those movements would be is, it either shows that nothing's been done working with an open airport. And I may be talking out of term. If I am, I'm sorry. But with them both being the same entity, really, I don't think I'm out of way saying my comments about the airport and in its connection to this development. But what we also see is that there are other developments coming forward that Highways England are not too chuffed about. So how are we going to fit that with this development? I mean, the second part of it, and I'll be completely honest, I can't support the second part of it, and I won't, because it's going away from what the local plan is. And that, everybody put a lot of work into what that is, and we should be sticking to it. And not trying it, again, in my opinion, trying to sneak something in through the back door in moving the employment part of it. So that's my thought on that. I'm pre-done on that one, so that's that. But this one, I am absolutely gobsmacked that we can't discuss what, or we haven't got the information about the traffic movements with an open airport, with the movements of an open airport, when we've told us that employment needs to be at this needs to be at this. Why? Because they're both together.
I think the point I was trying to make in the transport assessment is the transport assessment and the trip generation that's in there has accounted for an operational airport and the vehicle trips that would be associated with it. So it does take account of the airport is what I'm saying.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in quickly? Can I just come in on the education part, Councillor Cox, if I may? So I think what's been made clear is that the application does secure land for a school, and it secures also an education commuted sum. So the principle is established. We are securing monies in a Section 106 agreement for education provision. But if further down the road it is then decided that a school is better placed, there is that provision in the proposal for a school to be built, and the Section 106 can be amended accordingly. So I don't think it's correct to say there is no option to have another school, because I think that is included in the plans.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. But the funding that's there at this point in time will not come back. So to build more and put more school places within an area that's already full to capacity with traffic, and then potentially more traffic coming into that area because there's more school places, I'm lost, because that money will be spent on extending to basically, in another world, give a unit, a person, somewhere to be educated, not looking at everything else around it. And yeah, okay, if that's how we need to look at it, that a child is just going to have, right, get in there, that's how it's looked at. That's fine if that's how it is, but I can't support that. That's what I'm saying. I can't support that when that £6 million, whatever happens, he's not going to come back. We can't say, oh, you've spent it there, can I have it back, please? That will be gone. And we know on other applications that hadn't been followed through, and it had been lost, and it won't come back. So it ends up being the authority that has to try and find some money from somewhere to potentially build a school on a piece of land that should have had a school on. And if we don't say anything now, nothing will be said. And that's my take on it. So that's where I stand, and I won't move.
Can I just cut in there? Is there a provision that we can have the funding for a school in this outline planning?
Yes.
I mean, so is a unit rather than going out to expanding other schools?
Sadly, I don't think that's what the education colleagues are putting forward. The consultation response is that a commuted sum for expansion of existing provision is what is preferred. But as I said, the applicants have included school land in their proposals. So if that, you know, and as Emma said, the development is going to be built out over a long period of time. If that view changes, if the trajectory from the Department for Education changes, then there's provision there to do something differently if we want to. There is an option to bring a school forward, as there is land set aside for that purpose in the application site, and the Section 106 can be varied at a later date if that alternative route is considered later down the road, is what I think I'm trying to get across to members. Yeah.
Councillor Cox, just one. So what we just said there is that potentially we don't have to go down expanding other schools. We've got land for school, and there's money there for school. I'm looking at Emma now to see, is this something that we can put in as a narrative that says we ain't decided what we're going to do in terms of education yet, but we're open to thoughts.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that the point that Stacey just made around making sure that we are giving our technical expert consultees great weight when we're making these decisions is a really important one. The advice we're getting from education colleagues at the moment is that the contributions are the way to go in and ensuring that the development's properly mitigated in education terms. But as Stacey also said, the plans show land set aside for a school, so that is part of the proposals. So there is the opportunity at a later date, if education were to have new evidence in front of them for whatever reason, that view could change, that they're sat in the room, they can hear what the concerns are in that respect. And so that's a separate conversation, I think, to take away and continue to have. In terms of other sites that might generate a need for education at any particular point in time going forward, they're all assessed on their individual merits depending on the situations that might be at play and the advice we get at that time. So we do have to consider this as a standalone, and those as a standalone should they come forward in the future. But I hope that helps.
Councillor Cox?
Yeah, it helps partly, I think, but it would be great. I mean, one of the proposals I'm going to put forward, and I don't know how it'll go, is that we adjourn this and we try to gain more information as to what can and can't be done. It's because we'll sit here all day, and it's such as the road and potential speed. There's all kinds of questions that we're asking, and I'm sorry, mate, but the answers aren't there. I mean, the public transport issues, there's all kinds of issues. Public transport, as we well know, Steve, as there's another estate, and we know why, but we don't know why that funding was taken away. There's lots of other issues that are in there. And again, with this and the amendment in the second one, I think we all need to get our heads around it a little bit more and then come back. That's a proposal I'm making, and that's up to everybody else what they do.
Emma?
I think there's potentially a different way that you could deal with those concerns outside of the context of the planning application itself, particularly when you talk about concerns about changes to speed limit, for example, because what colleagues were saying is that they assess a worst case scenario, so they assess the impacts of those junctions on the speeds that are prevalent currently. But if the concern more generally is that you think that we should be looking at those speeds as a general issue, whilst that isn't necessarily material to this application because they've done the technical assessment based on what the speed is currently, we can undertake to take that away and do the work with highways. I don't think it needs to mean that we defer or adjourn this application because it is a slightly different point that's being made given that those technical assessments took place with the speed as it currently stands. But we can certainly as officers take that away and undertake to talk to colleagues about what that might look like separate to the application if that would help.
Any more questions? Councillor Dennis.
I think it's lastly on the education provision, it's interesting to note that Peel, the developers, have put forward this land for a school. Now, I'm not going to say my thoughts on Peel, but they don't have a good name in this place and in the city now. But for them to offer up a patch of land, which they could have easily put more properties on, I think, and also the rest of the land use, they've put some bits in there for community use as well. I think this is a good example of a developer thinking about what the needs of the community are going forward. We've seen on other applications where developers haven't been as acquiescent to community needs or putting in facilities such as this. And so for me, it's a little bit backwards in thinking for then the council's education team to say, no, we don't want it. So I do want more information on that before I can make a decision. So I would be supportive of Steve's adjournment request in that regard.
Thank you.
Emma, you.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I would say at this point is we have those officers in the room with us today, and I'm sure if they're able to explain in some more detail around that to help you make the decision, then they're more than able to do that.
So turning to the affordability issue in terms of the funding that's available, the funding available from this state is insufficient not only for a new primary school, which we would need, new primary provision, but also we've identified that we need 210 extra secondary places. So were we to have a new primary school on site, then A, that's not affordable within the Section 106 funding as it is. A new school would be in excess of 10 to 12 million pounds. The site, this one is 6.6, so we don't have sufficient funding for a new primary school. Equally, the 210 secondary places, we wouldn't have any money for that expansion. So the two models that we've looked at, the one which is Hayfield Lane Primary School is site restricted, and that only would be a one form entry primary expansion. Were we to enter into the agreement with Hayfield School, and they are minded about that application, that would create both the additional primary provision and additional secondary provision on that site, and it would create essentially a through school. So you'd have 210 primary pupils on Hayfield secondary school site that would then automatically become the secondary age pupils. So we can deliver all the places at Hayfield School by creating a through school. The funding available from this development is simply insufficient to provide one primary school, let alone the secondary school provision as well. And all the other matters that I expanded earlier on. do have their advantages as well.
I think, can I just, as well, it's also about the shared usage as well. When we talk about an expansion, we're talking about classroom space to add the additional places into a school. When we're talking about a new build, we need kitchens, we need halls, we need utilities, we need all of those things. You've then got a leadership structure and a committee and all of those things that have got to be developed that come at a cost, which you don't have those additional costs when you're doing an expansion. So as much as £6.5 million would enable us to expand the current school and to do the secondary provision, it wouldn't enable us to build all of those additional features. A new hall can cost you in excess of £1 million alone. So we just don't have the funds to be able to develop a new provision right now.
What I'm hearing then is the funds that Peel put forward for this, for the 106 agreement, aren't sufficient enough. I'd suggest asking Peel nicely if they can have a bit more money, but I don't imagine that'll be forthcoming, and I imagine there's formula to dictate the funding. So what we're saying is, we are councillors as well. We are representing our residents in our areas, and we know that additional development, additional cars on roads, additional battles for parking, for school car parking, it happens in all of our wards. But there isn't the money available to mitigate those problems, basically.
It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. So what planning dictates for us to do and what is recommended goes against what we would want for any of our communities. That's the stalemate that we've got. We could, as ward councillors, I don't think we could accept more cars going on the streets in this area without additional facilities for places to go. And that's the disconnect we've got between the officer's position and our position.
Steve, transport.
Yeah, I was just going to try and pick up a couple of things that Councillor Cox has raised, and just to sort of clarify. I have had a quick look on the crash map. The road accidents are occurring at the two areas where the junctions will be amended. And I think, as Andy said before, a road safety audit would carry that, would look at that. And that might come with a recommendation to reduce the speed limit. So as you approach, and obviously the two junctions would also reduce the speed at that point anyway, because of the nature of what's proposed. But I'd want to just clarify that with our road safety colleagues. They hold the data, but looking at the crash map, that's what that shows. As far as the buses are concerned, by 2027 we're moving into a franchised network. That takes away what the bus operators will do. It would be down to South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority to dictate where the bus routes go, and this would fall into that. And so I have no fear that the bus support for this network will happen, as I expect to happen with other developments as we move forward. So that's a change in the nature. And just going back to what Mark sort of said before, we have tried to build in the worst case scenario. So for looking at Junction 3, looking at all the developments within the local plan and the operational airport, so that we can develop the right answer or solution at that point that can deal with all the traffic there and also build in a bit of capacity for the future. So that's kind of all in hand, and we're trying to look at the whole picture and not just this particular application. So it's looking at everything there.
Councillor Kidd, you were first.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we're very quickly reaching a tipping point, not just with this development, but those down the road. We can only consider what is in the red line. That is what we're here to consider. Unfortunately, what happens outside the red line is just as important, and we cannot consider that. We're talking about building what is essentially a new town, a small town, but a new town, a self-contained unit. It's got to have a school. It's got to. I just can't see. We either put a school there, or else we don't build it. Simple as. And it's your choice. Officers, you're saying we've got to do this. We're saying we don't want to do that. This is what we need. we're councillors, we're on the planning committee. This is what we are demanding, and it's up to you to deliver it.
Stacey.
Thanks, Councillor Kedger. Yeah, we understand the sentiment and we completely understand what you're trying to say, but I think the point has been explained that there is provision on the application for land for a school, and there is also in the alternative a contribution. So the concern that you have has been dealt with. That's what officers are trying to get across to you.
Committee, any more questions? Councillor Anderson.
It's just an observation, really. The conversations we're having, that basically we're probably saying Doncaster's never going to get another school. You know what I mean? So unacceptable.
Anyone more? Councillor Dennis.
Sorry, Chair. Stacey, I do just want to clarify what you mean about that there's an alternative between a plot of land for the school or the contribution. In the 106, it just says about the contribution.
Yeah, so I was just trying to make the point that the education colleagues' consultation response asks for money because their position is the contribution is preferable for all the reasons you've heard. The applicants have included in their proposals land for a school. So, because the development is likely to be built out over a long period of time, if the policy position changes, if the Department for Education decide that, you know, their preferred thing would be for new schools to be built, then there is the option to vary the Section 106 and have that land brought forward for a school. So what we're saying is it's not one or the other now, and the decision doesn't have to be made now. If you see what I mean, the Section 106 will secure the money, but it can be kicked further down the road, is what we're saying, because the applicants have included that land for the school in the proposals.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you for that, Stacey. I was led to believe that whatever 106 agreement we agreed to in this meeting is final, can't be amended, bosh, that's it.
Yeah, so in all likelihood, if things change, that would mean another planning application would have to come forward for the school. At that point, the Section 106 agreement would be reviewed and a decision on it would then have to come back to members at that point.
So it's an if and but and maybe sort of thing. Okay. Thank you, Stacey. Yeah.
Any more from the committee? No. Is there a proposal to grant planning permission subject to the imposition of planning conditions and a Section 106 agreement? Is there a mover for the recommendation?
Can I make a suggestion, members? It seems to me there is unresolved issues that members perhaps would appreciate some more information on. I'm wondering whether members would prefer to defer the application. I'm just reminding you that that option is available to you, but we just need to discuss what your sort of reasoning is for that. I mean, if that's another option before we vote on the recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Cox proposed an adjournment, a postponement of the decision earlier.
I mean, to be fair, I think the debate that we've had since Councillor Cox's recommendation's been good. And I think it's actually brought more to light than probably if we'd have just adjourned it straight away. So I agree with Councillor Cox, it's definitely something that should be considered. So is there a proposal to adjourn the planning permission? Is that seconded?
Right, so we just need some reasons, please, formulated from members about why we want to defer it.
Go on. I'm done.
More information regards the education provision and how the education officers have come to the conclusion about places in existing schools and the hybrid with the secondary school as well. And the second reason is more information about the highways matters on Great North Road and Hurst Lane.
Yeah. Just another point as well, Councillor Dennis, I think you also mentioned, I think you probably a wider point about the baseline and assessments around the operational airport as well, which I say they are included in the environmental statement, but if I can kind of just get some more clarity on those for you.
Okay, thank you, members. Chair, if we could just take a vote on that, please.
Is there a proposal to adjourn? Defer, sorry. Councillor Cox, seconder. Councillor Kidger. So all those in favour for deferral? That's unanimous, thank you. Right, can we have just a 5-minute break for comfort break for everybody? It's been a long debate that. Back in, what time is it? 4 o'clock, thank you. Are we ready to pick up on this? Nobody missing, say aye. Right. Application number 2, 25/00137/OUTA. I'm not going to bother reading it, but based on what's just happened on the previous plan, we're suggesting that we should defer this in line with the previous one. Does anybody disagree with this? So it looks like everybody in the room agrees. So can I ask the committee, can I ask somebody to propose that we, Councillor Kidger, seconder?
I'm just clarifying, for it to be clear for everybody in the room, it's for exactly the same reasons because the issues are the same. Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry, who moved that?
Councillor Kidger.
Yeah.
Seconder? Councillor Anderson. Can we have a vote then, please? All those in favour? Yep. Nobody against. Thank you.
Chair,
Items.
Apologies for coming in late with that. I would like to point out what I believe to be an error in the pack, if I may, and it's to do with the number of affordable houses on the development.
We'll check it out next one.
No, I want it to get corrected. I can't find it in here, but for officers, the provision of affordable houses, it should be 23%, and I don't think that calculation has been made correctly. It says 230. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies.
Just on that one, I don't think the M18 were on that second proposal either in terms of the 106 contribution. If it's not, if we can amend that for next one.
Chair, yes, we'll make sure that everything's as it should be before next time round, but we're looking and we think it is there, but we'll absolutely check.
Right, item 6, appeal decisions. The report is for information only. Does any member wish to speak on this item? Can I ask that committee member move that the report be noted? Members, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business of today's meeting. I would like to thank everyone for their attendance and input. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.